Well, hi, and welcome back to Mr. America Hart. I am John Hart, and today I'm sharing with you the evolution of high-intensity, heavy-duty training by Mike Mentzer, okay? Specifically, heavy-duty training by Mike Mentzer. And why, I have to give you a quick background on this one. Why would I even have the balls or even the knowledge to even talk to you about this? Well, here's the thing. Not only was I an advocate of using this type of training, I did it myself from the very beginning when I started working out in the mid-'80s. Mike Mentzer had his booklets that he was selling through the magazines at the time when I first became a bodybuilder. And so I purchased his booklets and I would go ahead and do those routines. And one of the books that I'm going to show you today does contain the same routines that were in those booklets. So it's very important to understand that. But let's go over the evolution. First, where did it start? How did he get started in his heavy-duty, high-intensity training routines? Well, back in the early 70s, 1971, Mr. America, it's well documented, Casey Viator became the youngest Mr. America of all time at 19 years old. A young Mike Mentzer took 10th place in that Mr. Olympia, in that Mr. America, I apologize, Mr. America. And at the time, the physique he had was okay. Well developed, by a lot of people's standards, but okay. He was training in a conventional, high-volume fashion, the standard training of the day, the Arnold routine of the early 1970s, 6 days a week, a lot of volume training involved. Now, what did that get him? Well, it did get him to the national level at the time. However, and a fraction of the physique that he would have later on. But what else did it do? It blew out his shoulder. Okay, you all have heard me talk many times about how high volume training, when you're using your joints in a certain way, and not too many people have perfect mechanics. So assuming that there are some areas of your body that could use better mechanics, doing high volume training will bring out problems much sooner, just by the repetitive nature of high volume training. You get it? So Mike blew out his shoulder badly. It forced him into what he considered to be retirement. I mean, he was done training and he was done competing at that point in time. So from 1971 through 1973, he did not compete. Didn't even train. And then eventually he got back to it. 1974, he got back to training. However, through his exposure to Casey Viator and Arthur Jones, high-intensity training, and the Nautilus machines that were out at the time that Arthur Jones made. But it was specifically the routine, high-intensity training routine that Mike Mentzer was exposed to from Casey. And at the time, Arthur Jones was promoting a full-body routine 3 times a week. So there's your frequency. Full body, 3 times a week. Everything got hit 3 times a week. Usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And how many sets? At the time, he was doing generally 1 or 2 sets per exercise. Okay? By the standard of the day, that was an extremely low volume of work. All taken to failure, all with forced reps, all with negatives at the end of each set. And yes, of course, at the time, they were experimenting with steroids. So he did his business 3 times a week. That elevated his physique. He grew mass straight through 1974 and 1975 to the point where he won the Mr. America in 1976, qualifying him for the Mr. Universe. And in 1978, he went on out there, still training 3 times a week, full body routines. So he has now 3 years of that under his belt. Some hard, high intensity training, full body routine 3 times per week. That kind of frequency with, of course, I'm saying it again, they're using steroids at the time. He goes on at that high level, wins the Mr. Universe in 1978, qualifying him to be a professional IFBB bodybuilder. So far, the evolution of his training went from high volume to 3 times per week, full body training. And then he became a professional bodybuilder in 1978. in 1979, elevating the intensity of his training to a whole other level, recognizing, both he and his brother Ray, recognizing that they were at a plateau of development, so they were not progressing as much at that time. They decided, logically, to raise the intensity even further. When they did that, now we're at the point where we have the first book I'm going to show you. This book right here, it's called The Mentzer Method to Fitness. So it's a book that a lot of you may not recognize, The Mentzer Method to Fitness. You might find a copy of it out there in Amazon land or eBay land. And I'm going to share with you the routine that this is the very first published book that Mike ever put out there. And it was actually published through a publishing company in New York. And it had the routine of the day. So the book is actually published in 1979, 1980, but the routine that he wrote prior to that for the book, okay, was a 4-day-a-week routine. Whoa, how's that, you say? Well, Mike evolved his own training from those 3 full-body routines, workouts per week, realizing that when he bumped up the intensity using even more high-intensity techniques, more negatives, more rest-pause training, those omni-contraction training, static holds, isometrics, with much more weight, much more intensity, not just pre-exhaust with forced reps, but pre-exhaust, forced reps, negatives, negative accentuated training, rest pause training, omni-contraction training, all of that combined. And it was so intense that it demanded, the higher the intensity goes, the lower the volume and or frequency must be. This is a law of nature. We always use the analogy of sprinters versus marathon runners. Sprinters run much harder, much more intensely, much faster than marathon runners. However, sprinters cannot keep that up for 26 miles like a marathon runner can. A marathon runner runs at a much slower pace, less intense pace, and keeps it going for much longer. The analogy to this type of training is valid. So I'm sharing that with you, that if you understand that, then you'll understand the more intense your training gets, the less you can do. And when it came around to Mike documenting it in this first book, this was the first iteration of going down from 3 times a week training to what? Well, he split the body in half into an A and a B workout. And that's what's in this book right here. It's an A-B routine performed twice per week. So the frequency went from 3 times per week to 2 times per week. Half the body trained on Monday, the other half of the body trained on Tuesday. Take a day off. The first part of the body, the A routine, trained on Thursday. The second part of the body, the B routine, trained on Friday. Take 2 days off. That's your whole week right there. Now you're into week 2 and you do it all over again. So still, the frequency, again, chemicals, the steroids, the bodybuilding drugs are still all being used at that point in time. But the frequency now, at that point, it evolved from 3 times a week to 2 times per week with much higher intensity techniques. Okay? That being the case, the body parts, the workout had to be split, in his opinion, in half. He was no longer willing to do a full body workout 3 times per week, much less twice per week. He just said, I'll split the body in half and do an A-B split twice per week. That's where we get the 4 days per week working out. So what did that turn into? Well, Mike was now at that point when this book became published, at the same time as when it became published, he had already gone in the Olympia 1 time, and now he was entering the Olympia the 2nd time. As he went into the Olympia in 1979, then 1980, he came into the Mr. Olympia in 1980, harder, bigger than ever before. Just like he did at the 1979 Mr. Olympia. He was bigger and harder than ever before. He continually, his physique grew and became more well-defined. his overall development, developing weak body parts, all of it improved. He improved as a bodybuilder, as a professional bodybuilder. At the time, understand, they all took drugs, the top IFBB bodybuilders. So it's not a valid statement to say, well, he took more drugs, he took better drugs, all of that. They all had access to it. There has to be somewhere along the line that we all agree that if they're all loaded, something was changing, something. We clearly see that his training was. I was friends with the man. He shared with me his training. I didn't just read it in his books. I was friends with him, and then I took over the consultations for his MikeMentzer.com and Mentzer Sharking Enterprises after his death in 2001. So what happened? Mike was done competing. He had some challenges in his life. He had to go away for a little while, got his act cleaned up, came back, and wrote, 1991, this book right here. This is the first heavy-duty book that he wrote using the name Heavy Duty. He did have the name Heavy Duty prior to this book, and in all of his magazine ads, it was called Heavy Duty. But we notice as we read the book and we go over the routine that he was recommending at that point in time. This was now 1991. What was he doing at the time? He was training clients. He was no longer competing himself. He was gathering information based on how he trained his clients, both steroid-using clients and natural clients. The routine that is in this book is a push-pull legs. 3 workouts per week, a push workout, meaning something like chest, shoulders, triceps. Take a day off, like on a Monday, take a day off. Wednesday, back and biceps. Take a day off. And then Friday, legs. Take 2 days off. That's your whole week. So he's now down to training body parts with a frequency of once per week. The fact that some of you would look at this and say, well, Mike never really did this routine, so he doesn't know if he would have grown even further from where he came from that A-B split twice per week. Well, you don't know that. I don't know that. You don't know that. We do know that he did train clients, advanced clients that were already at stages such as that, on that A-B split routine, and then went to this. That's why he wrote the routine. That's why he published the workout. That's why he was training people this way, with a frequency of each body part being trained only once per week. And again, there was a concurrent increase in intensity using the most brutal techniques at that time. Forced negatives, where you're doing a forced rep with a training partner helping you curl a weight up in a machine. Let's say you're in a bicep machine, helping you curl it up, as in with a forced rep, but then pulling it down. Now we're talking. That's really intense. Finding ways of making those workouts even more intense. So this workout contained a push-pull legs workout performed each body part once per week. Okay, so that's Heavy Duty 1 for you. And again, he developed that workout training clients. Yes. For the remainder of what I'm going to show you, the same applies. He wasn't a professional bodybuilder at this point. He was just a teacher. He was just a trainer. He was just with a couple thousand clients around the world. A whole bunch in person at Gold's Gym in Venice. I was one of them. And then online, on the phone clients around the world that he was advising and keeping track of their progress. And based on all that input, he went and evolved further from that Heavy Duty, the first Heavy Duty book, the white cover book, to this one, Heavy Duty 2, Mind and Body, it was called. And this was the first book, first time that anybody ever addressed overlapping. What's overlapping? Overlapping is when a body part is being trained directly, as in, I'll give you a really good example. Let's just use your triceps. Your triceps are used when you train your triceps directly in, let's say, a shoulder and arm workout. Okay, that's one of the workouts in this book. Shoulders and arms. Your triceps are used when you do a shoulder press. Your triceps are used when you do tricep extensions and dips or any compound tricep movement. So within that workout, the triceps are getting a tremendous amount of direct stimulation. Okay? Indirectly, when you train your chest, every pressing movement that you use, every one of them, is going to use your triceps. It's impossible to avoid using them. So if you train your chest on one day of the week, you're getting indirect tricep work. Then you do a direct tricep workout. That's the second time they're getting hit, but it's direct. Then you're doing, here's the surprise for some of you, and by the way, the shoulder presses were in that tricep workout, so yeah, that's indirect as well, but I call that shoulder and arm workout. It's in there. Then here's the surprise for some of you. Your triceps, when you pull the elbow down to your side, your lat is not the only muscle that pulls your humerus, your upper arm bone, to your side. From this position, from this position, from this position. And even if you do a row, your lat is not the only muscle that's pulling your elbow when you row or do a pull down or chin up of any type. Your lat crisscrosses the armpit, but God made us amazing. He made us amazing. The other muscle that crisscrosses your armpit is your tricep, the long head of your tricep. Both muscles, your latissimus dorsi and your long head of your tricep, both close the joint. Both concurrently. You cannot isolate one from the other. Both close the joint to complete the movement. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, I just said in a chest workout, you hit your triceps indirectly when you press. We can all agree on that. On a tricep workout, you hit your triceps directly. We can all agree on that. But on a back workout, you're hitting your triceps indirectly. It's indisputable. It's not mentioned much in bicep circles, but it's true. And so, as best as he could do at the time, Mike, in this book, Heavy Duty 2, Mind and Body, he, for the first time, addressed overlapping and tried to arrange a routine. He called it his ideal or principled workout in such a way as to avoid as much overlapping as possible. It's impossible. It's impossible to avoid some. You can do your legs and avoid using your upper body altogether by doing certain leg machines and doing, let's say, a belt squat. But the moment you go and you do a barbell squat or anything involving your upper body, you just overlapped into using your lower back, parts of your trap, parts of the muscles that support your spine. Okay? And even your neck. So all of that being the case, that's what we call overlapping. In this book, Heavy Duty evolved further from the push-pull legs 3 times per week workout with a frequency per body part of once per week to an upper-lower split in this ideal or principled workout. The ideal or principled workout, Mike also gave names to it. I wish he didn't give a name to it. I wish he would have just called it upper and lower to try to separate out that overlapping. I'll tell you what he called it. He called it chest and back on a Monday, for example, then take 4 days off initially. Sometimes 4 to 7, it would build up. More rest days, the more intense your training got, the bigger and stronger you'd get. But initially, 4 days off. On a Monday, he would train chest and back. On a Friday, he would train legs. He would have clients train chest and back on Monday. Friday would be legs. The following week, Go 4 days past Friday. So we have Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Tuesday would be shoulders and arms in week 2. Followed by 4 days later, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, legs again. So in the course of 2 weeks now, in the course of 2 weeks, you're training the upper body twice, both directly and indirectly, through the use of both isolation and compound movements. Get the book and you'll see what I mean. And you're training your legs twice in 2 weeks, directly. You get it? Upper, lower, upper, lower. So now you have to take your mind elsewhere. You're still training upper body once that week, a frequency of once per week. You are hitting directly or indirectly the vast majority of upper body muscles, and you are stimulating them by training to failure and beyond. You're stimulating all of those upper body muscles, directly or indirectly, in a chest back workout or in a shoulder arm workout the following week by using both isolation and compound movements. And then there's a leg workout in both weeks. So that's where this book, which was published in 1993, where this book came into play. Heavy Duty 2, Mind and Body. Now, the surprise in this book is Mike went even further. And he evolved heavy duty even further, using the example of some of his clients who didn't make great progress training with that kind of frequency. He used his logic to further reduce either the volume or the frequency or certain exercises. He theorized. See, at the time, you guys have to understand, we have hindsight. So we're looking back at this time period. And we're saying, well, we know better now in a lot of ways. We have research now in a lot of ways. Well, Mike was wrong about this. He was wrong about that. Well, at the time, nobody was doing this sort of thinking. They were blindly following 3 days on, 1 day off, training. 6 days a week, 1 day off, training. Body parts being trained 2, sometimes 3 times per week, training. With upwards of 20, 25 sets on average per body part. This man was one of the first ones to say, let's see where we can take this and what happens when we train the clients this way. And they made further progress, is the point. So the second routine that he offers in here is called the consolidated routine. The consolidation routine eliminated all isolation exercises and kept just the big bang exercises in there. What are we talking about? Well, one workout, for example, involved doing deadlifts, dips, and calf raises. Okay? Deadlifts, dips, and calf raises. He would do that routine on people. 1 set, mind you. He'd warm up and then do 1 set with as much intensity as can be done. The deadlifts were the only exercise that were not done beyond failure, but taken to the point where you couldn't get another rep, complete another rep, and then put the weight down. The dips were taken beyond failure. The calf raises beyond failure with all those high-intensity techniques that I've mentioned. And then he would have them take 5 to 7 days off completely. And what would they do when they get back in the gym? Usually 5 days later to start, they'd come back in and they would do squats. He had them doing Smith machine squats. He believed at the time Smith machine squats were safer than doing barbell squats. I've done videos on this, and I'll put a link down below as to why I disagreed with that to his face when he was alive. I still to this day disagree with that. But he had them doing Smith machine squats, and then he had them doing chin-ups. That's with an undergrip, close undergrip. And then he had them doing military presses, either standing with a barbell or in a machine. So between all of the exercises, they're all compound movements except for the calf raises. He eliminated every isolation exercise. And what was this by design? Who was it designed for? two populations. One was the people who have a very poor ability to recover from most types of training. This is a small population, okay? When we're talking about people who have poor recovery ability, you know, there's a bell curve I always use to describe this. About 84% of the population fall into some general assumptions we could put on them, let's say. General conditions of training and exercise. That 84% did well on the ideal or principled routine. But then off on the edges, we had on the outskirts, 8% here, 8% here. These were the outliers. These were the people where on one end you had people who could train more often even. They recovered very well. They overcompensated and grew muscle very well. So training every fourth or fifth day or sixth day was too long for them. They could come in every second or third day and blast away again. On this end, however, we had what Mike called at the time, he called them this. He said the midgets of recovery, the albinos, people who are very rare. You know, an albino is somebody who doesn't have melanin in their skin, very little. And so he called them the midgets of recovery, the albinos of recovery. Very few people are that way. And he used an example in this book of a client named Racy who couldn't recover from all of this other training. So he kept reducing his training to where he was only training on a consolidated routine once every 7 days. Eventually he turned it down to every 2 weeks or 14 days. And progress started for Racy. Well, Racy was a very rare individual, okay? The vast majority of us are not that, okay? Again, using extreme high-intensity training techniques. I found myself, when I tried that routine when Mike was alive, he urged me to try it after I'd been doing the ideal or principled routine for a couple of years. I did go on to use it for several more years with proper adjustments. But he urged me to do this consolidated routine because to him it was just the greatest thing of all time. And I did try it. I did not like it. It did not bring further progress for me. I got good at deadlifting, I got good at squatting, but I wasn't necessarily growing new muscle. So I went back to the ideal or principled routine and continued to progress, both physique-wise and strength-wise. So I was happy and content with that routine and how I made adjustments to it. So the consolidated routine, to me, was sort of a failure, but to be used on a certain population, these guys over here, the poor to recover population, or, Mike said in his book, the super advanced bodybuilder who has milked every bit of their genetics through using all the routines I've mentioned up till this point. All of them. A high-intensity 3 times per week full body routine, a push-pull legs, an AB twice per week split, a push-pull legs, an ideal principled routine. This should take years to get through that. And then, what are you left with? He believed, in theory, to optimize or to reach your full genetic potential, the consolidated routine would get an advanced bodybuilder there. That's what he believed. There were none who actually did it, so I can't say it, that I know if that's true or not, okay? So I can just only speak from my own experience. I didn't enjoy the routine, I didn't like it, I didn't get results from it, and I don't recommend it. So if I have a very slow to recover client, I would consider training them in that way, but not otherwise. And then lastly, how did it evolve further? Or did it? So Heavy Duty 2, Mind and Body, published in 1993. This book right here, The High Intensity Training the Mike Mentzer Way, published in 2001, 2002 by Mentzer Sharkey Enterprises by both Joanne Sharkey and John Little. You see that name in the bottom right here. John finished this book with Joanne after Mike died. The majority of the transcript was written for the book. Mike died in 2001. it was left to John and Joanne to finish this book. And in it, the great contribution of this book, I can say, is the 7 fundamental principles that are the first 7 chapters of this book. They accurately describe, and I would highly recommend that any of you get this book. It's on Amazon for cheap, something like $25, just to read those first 7 chapters. They accurately describe and give a greater understanding of how to think about our bodies and our purpose in doing certain things in training and how we can adjust the volume, the frequency, the intensity, and use specific or specificity of training to get the results that we want. There we go. You can't train like a marathon runner and look like a sprinter. You can't train super high volume as a bodybuilder, a natural bodybuilder, and expect to look like a bodybuilder. Doesn't work. Almost impossible to recover from, much less grow on. A steroid bodybuilder, there may be a case for that to be made, but the natural ones, not so much. So that was the greatest contribution of this book, in my opinion. The routine or the evolution of heavy duty all the way into this book is not much. It's the exact same routine as I just described in Heavy Duty 2. Except there are a few, what I called flaws, and I pointed them out to Joanne when she was alive. She received that well. She accepted that I was correct, but it was never edited in the book, and she died. So the flaws, I'll put a video down below. I'll link up the video I did on that, on the flaw of Mike Mentzer's heavy duty routine. And it's the one in this book right here. Okay? So I'll put a link for that down below. You can watch that video so you'll know what I'm talking about. Other than that, a good book. Okay? So that's the evolution. That's the evolution of heavy duty, high intensity training. How Mike went from amateur competitor after an injury, a major injury from high volume training, amateur competitor, just skyrocketing the development of his physique with high intensity training 3 times per week. And then he eventually became a pro bodybuilder with that routine. As a pro, he progressed even further with an AB twice per week split. And then as he got near the end of his career, he made some subtle changes to the routine. It was pretty much similar to that. And then he would go on. He took more days off near the end of 1980. He took more days off on that AB twice per week split. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, Mike would train clients and come out with his last 2 books, Heavy Duty and Heavy Duty 2. And those books describe the routines that worked on the clients because he took the first principles and then evolved further to get further progress on even the super advanced clients that he was training, pro bodybuilders even at the time. So that's it. Y'all, hit me down below in the comments section. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and shoot them down below. Love to see what you think. I will link up the videos I mentioned in this video down below so you can watch them. There were 3 of them. The one was how much I despise the Smith machine. The second one was the consolidation routine, what I call the worst routine of all time. And then the third one was the flaw in Mike Mentzer's routine, training routine. At the very end, that's the one that was in High Intensity Training the Mike Mentzer Way. So that's it for today. Listen, before you go, off to my left, you can see a disc pop up next to my head. That is the subscribe button for my channel. Please give that thing a tap, won't you? And let YouTube know you're enjoying my videos and that you want to be notified when a new one pops up. Down below and off to the left, you're going to see thumbs up right there. Please give that thing a tap. Light up the thumbs up and light up the YouTube algorithm where Mr. America Heart is concerned. They appreciate it, and I do too. From my heart to you, I'll see you soon. Thank you.